This is Jewish Spotlight, a weekly television program presented by Chabad Lubavitch of Long Island, featuring various aspects of modern Jewish life and Jewish culture. Now, here is your host, Rabbi Tuvia Teldin.
Shalom. Once in a while, our very calm lives here on Long Island as Jews, as human beings, is upset by certain incidences that occur which really rock us to the core as far as realizing that we're not safe in this civilization unless we make an honest effort to work, make sure that everybody conducts themselves properly, and people don't sit and lie, people don't make up all types of malice in order to be able to hurt other people. Very recently, unfortunately, something like this happened, which wakes us up to the fact that we have to always be on guard to different things that could happen in our very own community. At Hofstra University, the student newspaper took on an advertisement from an organization which is well known for over 20 years to spread lies and hate about the Jewish people. And it caused a tremendous controversy, and for good reason. The ad that was submitted was basically an independent little booklet which is distributed all over the country. It was called The Revisionist, which, as its name says, has as its purpose the aim of revising history, of rewriting history. And rewriting a history which for the Jewish people is so painful and so much part of our core being that when somebody even begins to touch upon the idea of rewriting that history, which is ours, it's something that hurts very, very deeply. And for that reason, this is something that we have to discuss and we have to talk about. Because talking about it, first of all, brings the truth to the surface, and it exposes a lot of the lies of what these people are trying to accomplish. And also it will help, I hope, if there's anybody there from the editorial board of that newspaper, or any other editorial board, anybody in a position of responsibility, to rethink, if you're ever in a position where you have the choice of whether or not to present lies about history, whoever it might be, about the Jews, about the blacks, about the Chinese, about Italian Americans, the Irish, whatever it might be. History can be interpreted, but not rewritten. So today we have with us somebody who is unfortunately an expert in the field of the Holocaust. And I say unfortunately because she herself lived through it, but has been able to take that horrible nightmare of an experience that she went through as a child after a perfectly normal childhood to the age of 13. And then, of course, circumstances of the Second World War landed her in a completely different type of life. But she's been able to share her knowledge and be a testimony to thousands upon thousands of Jews and non-Jews alike about what the truths of the Holocaust are. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So I want to introduce Ruth Sender, who is here today from Comac, in fact a neighbor of my own, I've known for many years, who is unfortunately, of course, a survivor, but also fortunately been able to spread the word of what the real truth of the Holocaust is all about. Mrs. Sender, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's important that we do spread that truth. And when I come to many, many schools, and I think over 1 million books have been sold.
1 million of your books?
And
tremendous.
A lot of schools all over the country, in Canada and in translations, are using the cage to teach what hate and prejudice and indifference leads to.
Now, the cage is about your experiences as a child.
My experiences as a child in the ghetto of Lodz.
In Poland?
In Poland. And from there to Auschwitz, and from there to slave labor camps in Mittelstein and Grafenort, which is Germany.
You went to Auschwitz as a girl of how old?
I was 18 when I came to Auschwitz, because for 5 years I was in Lodz Ghetto.
Okay.
And Lodz Ghetto was
So you spent your teenage years basically in the ghetto?
If you call it spending it, teenage years.
Yes.
There were no teenage years, because my mother was taken away in 1942, when they surrounded the ghetto, and they would take away the sick, the old, and the children. And my mother was taken away among many, many thousands. And I was left with my 3 youngest siblings, and I was 16. And I became their mother, legally became their mother. Otherwise we would have been separated.
So how did you provide for them?
Well, whatever, I had to work in everybody had to work in the ghetto factories. Lodz Ghetto was a complete factory. And that was the straw we held on to. As long as we're productive, we'll survive. And we were productive. We would get a bowl of soup and a chunk of bread that was the main meal, and then
right.
and we shared it.
Okay, now I want to know more about Auschwitz. When you went to Auschwitz, you were 18 then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when you come to Auschwitz, what is your first impression? What did you see? Did you know immediately, or did you know beforehand about the extermination process that was going on?
We did not know in Lodz Ghetto when they got it out of sometimes kids ask me, why didn't the Jews fight back? Why didn't they rebel? Why didn't they run? Because when the Nazis came in, they would shoot, hang, and we had to come and watch. Anyone that was accused of trying to hurt a German. And that's what happens if you hurt a German. So of course we didn't fight back because you're responsible for thousands of other people. And why didn't we run? We lived a normal year. For 1,000 years Jews lived in Poland. Why would we run? Where would we run? So when we came to Auschwitz, before they got us there, they came with lies saying that the Russians are coming here.
Right.
And we have to move you, übersiedeln, transfer you.
To protect you.
To protect you, otherwise the Russians will kill you because you work for Germans. And we believed it. And when we came to the place known as Auschwitz, the Polish name is Refuting. We didn't know what the place was.
Okay, so did you know as soon as you came there that there was something going on?
There was so much chaos. There was so much confusion that we really didn't know. Because when they cattle cars, it took us 3 days until we arrived at the place not knowing where we're going. When they stopped the cattle cars, there were a lot of people who had died in the cattle cars.
In the car. So you were right next to dead bodies
Yeah.
as you were going in the cattle cars?
And we came out, there were Germans with dogs, guards, and people in striped uniforms, which we didn't know what that meant. And we heard music playing, because there was a marching band that always played for the people going to the gas chamber. And those were people that were taken there as prisoners, but they were forced to play, to add to the confusion. We came out, there was music, but there were people with dogs, and we smelled the stench, and we saw smoke, but we still didn't know what was happening, because everything was happening so quickly.
So how soon did you find out that there were gas chambers there?
Not until we were actually separated and put into barracks. Because when we came in, they said links, rechts, left, right. Men and women separate, and then the woman, they weren't that old. They looked older, because when they're young kid, everybody looks old. And women with children, or elderly women, or some looking sickly, was separated from the group that was the women's group. And I was sent to the healthy group, the healthy looking. I was 18. And we were ordered to dump all our clothes, eyeglasses, or had hearing aids. Everything had to be dumped. And march. Then we marched into another barrack where they cut our hair. And everything was happening so quickly, so much in shock that we really didn't know. We came out with our hair shaved. We looked at each other. Who are you? And then they put us into barracks, 500 women in the barrack. 5 people together, 3 layers. And then we found out what the smoke is and what the stench is. And there was a woman.
How did you react when you found that out?
I didn't believe it. I started screaming at that woman that was saying, Kinderlich, children, this is your family that's being murdered. And I called her a liar. Because we just couldn't, with the stench and with the smell, I just couldn't understand why she's lying. And even to this day, I don't know if the woman survived. I feel guilty for calling her a liar, but I couldn't believe it even then. And the people that went to the gas chambers did not know until they got in there, because they were told that they're going to take a shower and fold their clothes neatly, so they come out, they would know where the clothes are.
Right.
They were sent into shower room. There were shower heads. But then they locked them in and gas came out. And then the bodies were
So they
burned.
kept it a complete secret from everybody?
Everybody. Only the people that were in Auschwitz and had to bury the bodies or pull out the bodies from the gas chamber knew what was going on. Once you were in Auschwitz, you knew. But when you came in, you didn't know what was going on.
Unbelievable.
No, unreal.
Now,
Unreal.
you go around the country and you talk to school children, you talk to many, many different groups about this.
Yeah.
What kind of reactions do you get? And have you ever had any of these revisionists confront you and accusing you that you're lying completely about all of this?
I had one of them call me on the phone, not personally. Nobody faced me that said you were lying. In fact, when I come to the school, such silence that is unbelievable, the attention that I get, and the standing ovation. But I had a phone call from somebody several years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, and he called me, he gave me a Polish name. He said he's a historian. Did I write The Cage? I said yes. can you assure me that everything in that book is true? And I said, yes, I was there. It's about my family, my friends, my experiences. And then I thought that he's trying to do a book review or something, because I get a lot of those phone calls.
Right.
So I told him about To Life, which follows the cage, the survivors in the displaced persons camps, and rising from the ashes to try to build again. And then I told him about the Holocaust ladies, about the teaching the Holocaust and my speaking at schools, and the grandchildren's scars, because the scars are there. And he was quiet. He didn't say anything until suddenly he started screaming, "You are lying. There was no gas chambers. There was no Auschwitz. You are lying."
Unbelievable.
And I realized he wanted to get me angry. He did. And I realized who he is, and I told him so, and I hung up. And I called the bias squad. They tried tracing it. They couldn't. And then a few days later, he called again. And as soon as I picked up the phone, he said, "I read The Cage. You're lying about everything. You're lying about your mother." And that got to me, because my mother died in Chelmno, which was experimental gas chamber, where this first experimented how fast, how quickly could do. According to him, she never existed. But this is my mother. She was real. She existed.
Mm-hmm.
And
You have a picture of yourself also when you were in Lodz.
yes. This is a picture in the Lodz ghetto. It was 1941, was a demonstration where we were trying to protest the conditions that we live in. And seems like what I learned now that picture was taken by a German, a photographer, which now is in German archives. That's me. I was 14 years old. And that's my brother Motterle, and that's my brother Moishele. They did not survive. They vanished. I can't say they didn't survive, that they died. They vanished.
Right.
And those are the people, I don't even know who they are.
Now, you brought something along over here also, which I was looking through, and of course I've heard about these different types of revisionist literature. Just looking through, it's amazing that intelligent people can believe this type of material. The hogwash you see in here, and the absolute lies that are gone through, and then the bibliography at the end, it's incredible that people are writing about this, and people are literally trying to rewrite something in such a way just purely to spout anti-Semitism and more hatred and more of Nazi and Hitler propaganda.
Yeah, if we'll forget what happened, we'll never learn from history. And that's their aim, to make us forget that, just to believe that, now people are not capable of all those things, but they were. They said the German, educated, cultured people, they couldn't have done it, but they did.
Now, the discussion, of course, that we're dealing with here on Long Island is what exactly happened in Hofstra. And of course, we haven't interviewed those people who are the editors who are in charge of making the decision, and there can be a lot of discussion back and forth whether or not they should have taken it as an advertisement or not. For $450, no matter what, I mean, what money could have possibly been given, in my mind, it's not worth it, it's not right, it's not morally correct. And a newspaper, of course, has a responsibility, both to its readership and to society as a whole, to make sure that it presents at least something that's truthful. If somebody came along,
they have a right to deny something that they feel isn't right.
Exactly, exactly. And to the contrary, even if they would put something like that in, they should have at least put a disclaimer or had a dialogue, had some discussion in the paper itself.
Some survivors, interview survivors, put a real story in there.
Right. If you want to make trouble, you want to make news, or whatever it might be, at least cause something in a constructive way. This was a very, very destructive thing, literally like screaming fire in the theater.
You look at all the pain that they're causing by, there's some students there that have grandparents died in the Holocaust, parents are survivors, and it just brings back the pain. If somebody comes to me and tells me it didn't happen, but it did happen. Can you imagine how this hurts? And I guess the editor, whoever did accepted that article, didn't look at it this way.
Well, sometimes you have these young kids, and again, I don't know what their experience is in this type of field, but obviously a decision was made that was going to be a little bit more than what they thought they were getting themselves into, I should hope. But there are some very interesting quotes. Of course, I cut out and I was in touch with the Hill director, Rabbi Meir Middleman, who's the Hill director at Hofstra, and was discussing this with him also, and he faxed me a couple of things from the newspaper, and there were some very good quotes. One in particular that caught my attention, that came from Abe Foxman, who is the ADL National Director. Now, he pointed out that this is really not a First Amendment issue. In other words, it's not a matter that we have a responsibility to make this type of material available to anybody who wants it. In other words, there was no obligation to print this material. He said, and I quote, "There is no moral or legal obligation to present anti-Semitic hateful propaganda. Rejecting these ads does not violate freedom of expression. They deny the reality of the Holocaust and perpetuate blatant lies about the near extinction of European Jewry. Would a campus newspaper run an ad that denied slavery in America?" End of quote. And that's, of course, something that happened over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Something that happened just 50 years ago, where you have people actually living who witnessed such a thing. It's just incredible that students, or anybody for that matter, would continue to give license to this type of activity and this type of belief.
Well, they do, because they're doing this in many colleges. Hofstra just hit home because it's in Long Island.
But there are many colleges also that denied this.
Yeah.
In other words, he applied to them. He
it.
wanted this guy Harris. He applied. He wanted something submitted. And he was willing to pay for the ad. And they said, "Listen, we don't take responsibility for this. This is not a First Amendment right. This is poison. This is hatred. And we're not interested in doing this in our campus and in our society. We have a responsibility to our readership, and that's it. Period. End of sentence." And sometimes, you know what? We have to learn how to say no.
Yeah.
I think too often everybody feels that in order, quote unquote, to be democratic or to be able to live up to the First Amendment, we have to be tolerant to the point of having such an open mind that we can allow for anything.
But having an open mind, why didn't they think of bringing in the other side,
Exactly.
the survivors?
Exactly.
And tell me, let them come and tell me that.
In fact, to the contrary, I hope they feel an obligation to do that now. That they should bring in survivors and they should educate just as much as that little booklet that they submitted through their advertising inclusion.
Maybe
that they should have people do it. I hope they will. I hope they will. Now, you had a run-in, I understand. You were in an area which is considered to be a major...
That's the area in California,
right.
Visalia. I was in Tulare, which the next town is Visalia. I went there for a Friday night service. There were only 70 Jewish families in that whole area there. They had a house where they met. And Mr. Smith, or we should call him Mr., that's the cradle of the denial. That's where it comes from. And when I was in that place, Tulare, which is the same area there, I was invited by a teacher, many teachers. We're still friends with those teachers. And when she first time called me, she told me, "Do you know where Tulare is?" I said, "No." She says, "In California, and where the Holocaust deniers do their dirty work." And she said, to fight them, we use the cage to teach. And when I came there, I was first confused there. This is a picture 6 years ago, 93, I think. Mm-hmm. Me and Tulare. And it says Holocaust survivor students form bond.
Right.
I don't think there was anybody there that didn't hear of me, because 6,000 students heard me speak that week. And generations, kids that graduated had read the book. They didn't come forward. I expected that when I went there, that I will have confrontation. They didn't come forward. They didn't want to make waves. Maybe they're afraid of the truth. It's easy to send a pamphlet into college, pay the money, and say, "Well, publish it."
Right.
But I don't think they face
Well, I
anybody.
don't think that they, in general, show their face in too many areas.
No.
I mean, it's just like Ku Klux Klan, and it knows what kind of reaction it's going to get when they go someplace.
Yeah.
We saw that very recently in New York City. Yeah. However, these people also, if they would have any type of public appearance, especially in an area that would have any type of sympathy or any type of Jewish community or upstanding citizens, they would, of course, get the kind of reaction which they deserve. So I'm sure much of their activity is very underground, so to say, which is just as poisonous, because unfortunately today underground movements are thriving on the internet because it feeds right into this type of activity and this type of propaganda campaign. And this is why even now it's more important to be on top of these situations to make sure that we don't allow it to spread. And I hope that the people in Hofstra will make a very, very concerted effort to do something serious about responding to this, because it's taken very seriously as something that's a tremendous threat to the community as a whole, not just to the Jewish community, to allow this type of thing to take place.
I hope it's because it did happen, and we can't deny that it did happen.
Right.
They published it, and other places will learn from it, not to do it, or to, if you want to give them a voice, give a voice to the other people.
Now, I want to get back also to a little bit more of your activities as far as Holocaust survivors here on Long Island, meetings that are taking place, speaking engagements that you have, educational programs that are taking place. I know the ADL, I know many organizations are very involved in this. Yeah. Some people might say, and you've probably heard this before, that people feel, listen, enough already, we've heard enough about the Holocaust, why do you have to keep on talking about it, why do the Jewish people have to keep on reminding us about it? Tell our audience why it is important.
Because history could repeat itself. If we don't learn from the past, history will repeat.
Now, people will say to you, oh, come on, Mrs. Sender, do you really believe that that could happen again?
I didn't believe that the Holocaust will happen to begin with. There was nothing to tell us that could happen. The signs, even if we saw the signs, we kind of ignored it. And I had learned how easy it is to brainwash people. I come from Lodz, which was a huge city, and my best friend was the same age as I was, 13 years old. His name was Harry. He was an only child, and he lived with his grandmother and mother. And I came from the family of 7, so he was the 8th child.
Right.
He went with me Sunday to Jewish school because he didn't have to come to Jewish school. I went to Jewish day school. So he was off on Sundays because he went to public school. He came to learn Jewish history. He spoke Yiddish. Everybody spoke Yiddish.
He spoke Yiddish?
Yeah, everybody spoke Yiddish. And observed all the holidays. He was the child of that family. But when the Nazis came and they proclaimed that the German ancestors, even we didn't know that they were Germans, a Volksdeutschen have power over the Jews, in minutes, she came proclaiming that she had German ancestors and took wagons, Mrs. Gruber and her daughter, and loaded those wagons with everything they could of the Jewish friends and neighbors.
Really?
You won't need it. And put it and moved out to the nicest section of the city of Lodz, where a Jew was thrown out at gunpoint. And Harry he left, of course, with a mother and grandmother. 3 months later, he came before they locked together. Then when they locked it, and there was a complete cage. You couldn't come in, you couldn't go out. He came dressed in the German uniform, the Hitler uniform, with a nightstick, and he had blue eyes and blonde hair, and with the nightstick and with the uniform, he looked like a poster boy for the Hitler Youth.
Right.
In Yiddish, he told me, he came in the same words that we heard on the radio. The propaganda that the Jews are the parasite, the Jews are responsible for all the evil of the world. We have to kill them. And he spoke it in Yiddish, not in Polish or German, in Yiddish.
To you?
To me. And I said, Harry, how can you speak like this? You're my brother. You grew up with me. He was ashamed only for one moment. And then he said, now I am a German, and I have to do what is good for Germany.
Really?
In 3 months. It can't happen. It could happen here too. When I look at my neighbors now, I wonder, could it happen? Could they become the same like Harry, Mrs. Gruber? Yes, they could. Because where I live in my area, we find a swastika on my daughter's car one day. How could it happen here? Well, it could. And if we're not going to learn from the past, history will repeat itself.
Yeah, well, history has shown us that only too often.
Yeah.
Tell us about your travels as far as the speaking and the reactions. I'm very interested in the reactions of the children, how they react to what you're telling them, what total disbelief they must have when they hear the stories of what you went through as a child, what they read in the cage, and what they hear from you personally.
When I get many letters and email, and they tell me that when I ask, many times I heard the same thing, when I ask about the Holocaust, I would hear that it was terrible and that's it, let's not talk about it. But she took me by the hand and I feel that I was there. And I'm amazed at the response of those children, how they're touched and how they wish they could change something, how they wish they could help. And at least they're going to try to see that it never happened again to any people. So they learn something.
Excellent.
From the past. From the past.
Right.
It's just wonderful. All those. I got just yesterday. I had a letter from a teacher. She told me she's Indian ancestry, and how she's teaching the kids. And she wanted to know how to pronounce Moishele and Motele and Libel, and how do I do it in email pronounce it for her. So I sounded out the best way I felt it would come out. It's important to have to pronounce it right.
Very nice.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
We could learn, just as we could learn to hate, we could learn to love. To be tolerant. I tell them, you don't have to love me, but you have to respect me. And it works. It just works.
So that's your main message when you go out to these groups?
Learn what hate does, what prejudice does. And instead of hate and prejudice, let's learn tolerance. Let's learn respect for one another.
And do these students ever ask you about any of the classic anti-Semitic types of accusations? Do they try to clarify anything?
No, I had
Not necessarily here
one
on Long
time.
Island, but maybe you go out in other areas around the
there
country.
was one time that a student had asked me in a high school, not anti-Semitic, she looked at me and said, "Did you see the gas chambers? But either way, come prove it to me."
Right.
And I did. So then she sat down. But nobody asked questions. In fact, sometimes they're very careful that they might cause pain with their questions. And they're very sensitive,
very
with the
sensitive.
questions. Yeah, very sensitive.
Well, I think that it's hard probably for any of us, myself included, and of course for the non-Jewish community as in particular, to understand, number one, the pain of somebody like yourself who actually lived through an experience like that, or the pain, the personal national pain that the Jewish people as a whole feel as a result of what happened in the Holocaust. And when you have a loss that's as great as the Holocaust was, where there were 6 million people not just killed, but humiliated and put into such a situation and burned to the
Vanished,
crisp.
no graves.
No
Nothing to
graves, no
prove that they're
family,
dead,
nothing. And that then somebody has the audacity to come along and say that it never existed. This is such an absolute slap in the face. It's hard for somebody to really understand what it means. But this is why, of course, I think that what you're doing is I mean, I don't have to say it, is incredibly important. And I hope God should give you strength and give you health, that you should continue to do it for many, many years in the future. Because unfortunately, as you and I both know, there are unfortunately less and less Holocaust survivors who are alive and healthy enough to be able to give testimony to this. And this is why Steven Spielberg's
some of them
program,
don't want to talk about it.
Many don't want to program. I know Steven Spielberg had this program where he was filming many of the interviews
the Shaw
for
Foundation.
Shoah. It was the first time that many, many people were able to really sit in front of a camera and share their feelings. And I hope that also will serve as a testimony. But
I think
the bottom line is,
what he did.
whenever anybody says anything, it could be an informal conversation, it could be in conversation that people have in discussing what happened now. Somebody in that conversation has to be able to take a strong stand and said, you don't know what you're talking about, and until you actually hear from a Holocaust survivor, you see their pain, you talk to them and understand what exactly they went through, and how engraved those experiences are in their heart and their soul and their mind, it's impossible to be able to in any way come close to knowing what exactly the situation is.
I tell the students that now that they're the witnesses, once they hear me speak, when somebody comes and says it didn't happen, you say, I heard it from a survivor.
Okay. Well, Ms. Sender, thank you very much for being with us. Meantime, I want to tell everybody out there, please write a letter to Hofstra, do something, write a letter to yourself, and ask yourself what your attitude is about not only the Holocaust, but what you can do for somebody, maybe who went through it, what kind of kindness you can do, what kind of repair, what kind of Band-Aid you can give to somebody who still feels the pain when something like this happens, that it brings to the surface. Because it's important, and it means a lot, and it's our way of making tikkun olam, of fixing the past and fixing the world and making it a better type of place for all of us to be able to live in. So in the meantime, I hope all of you will go out there and do a mitzvah, do something good to make the world a better place. Because every mitzvah that we do, every grandchild, every person we have out there is doing something to reverse the terrible evils that took place during World War II. Shalom. Have a good week from the Jewish Spotlight.